In the quiet corners of historical whispers, where the threads of fact and fable entwine, there lies the compelling tale of Humpty Dumpty, a nursery rhyme that is full of mystery and rich with history. Many kids around the world have repeated these silly verses, enjoying the image of the egg-shaped character sitting on top of a wall. Yet, as with many childhood tales, the true origins of Humpty Dumpty has a lot to do with war, politics, and the complicated times we live in now. Picture the late 18th century England, a nation where stories told out loud were often more important than written words. This is the setting in which Humpty Dumpty first appears in history when it was published in 1797. But to understand this rhyme, you have to go back into England's rich oral culture, where it likely existed for generations before it ever was written down. Due to the rhyme was passed down through speech, it changed over time as artists made up new versions that reflected the times. Humpty Dumpty, in its early stages, wasn't just a silly catchphrase for kids. Instead, it was a puzzle or a conundrum that was cleverly made to confuse and make people think. Imagine the smoky bars and busy street corners where these kinds of riddles were common entertainment. You could think of them as a folkloric duel of wits between the smart and the commoner. At that time, words were as sharp as swords, and puzzles and rhymes were common. They were passed down from generation to generation, and they often hinted at current events or universal truths about people. These lines took on more meaning as political unrest built up and erupted into wars like the English Civil War. The great cannons that fell became symbols of chaos and the sudden changes that shook English society to its core. The mysterious lines of the rhyme could have been a metaphor for the fall of great powers or the arrogance that leads to a big fall, like in the stories of Icarus and the walls of Jericho. Through the mists of history, Humpty Dumpty's real form is still hard to find. It's never been fully shown, but it's always been there in the minds of people all over the country. Think of the year 1648, when the English Civil War was at its worst. Loyalties were as split up at that time as the country itself. In this part of the trapped town of Colchester stood a strong cannon that was proudly named Humpty Dumpty, which makes you think of something big and strong. The parliamentarian troops were afraid of this huge iron cannon, which was mounted on the town's walls. It was a sign of royalist resistance. There was a lot of fighting going on in England at the time of the siege of Colchester. The parliamentary troops surrounded the town, which was loyal to King Charles I. This is where Humpty Dumpty made history, not as a nursery rhyme character, but as a key figure in a deadly, serious game of war. Its mighty voice wasn't just a defender's roar, it was also a call to fight back against those who wanted to control Colchester. The story goes that the cannon, named Humpty Dumpty, took a big fall, not from a wall, but from the battlements where it was standing. When it hit the ground, its iron mass stopped making noise. The king's men tried hard, but they couldn't raise Humpty Dumpty to its former heights. The sad fall of this huge cannon is a powerful metaphor for the failure of the royalists' dreams and for Colchester's own demise during the siege. The fact that they were unable to fix the gun became a symbol of how some losses can't be fixed. While the broken pieces of Humpty Dumpty lay still, it became clear that some failures can't be fixed. People all over the country will always remember this sad event as Humpty Dumpty whispers in the background. It's a warning that sometimes history's verdict is final, and all the king's horses and men can't change the course of fate. You may have heard of King Richard III, whose short rule was marked by a lot of trouble. We need to look into this mystery more deeply now. Politics and the untimely deaths of his famous brothers, the princes in the tower, harmed his rise to the throne. There is a lot of attention on Richard III in Humpty Dumpty, which makes me think that the rhyme might be a subtle reference to his tragic fall from power. Think back to the late 1400s, a rough time in English history when the Wars of the Roses were at their bloodiest. Henry Tudor put up a challenge to Richard III's rule. Richard III was a bad guy in Tudor stories and is remembered in literature as a mean hunchback. The Battle of Bosworth Field, which would become a major turning point, was just around the corner. Richard III, brave but infamous, wore his armor, and the weight of his crown was equal to the weight of his shame. The crucial battle is going on, and Richard fights with all the fury of someone who knows that the throne of England is on the line. In the end, he is taken off his horse and cries out, "A horse! A horse! My kingdom for a horse!" as he tries desperately to get back on his feet in the fight and in history. The Plantagenet rule ended when Richard III was defeated and killed at Bosworth. This was the start of the Tudor era. When looked at this way, Humpty Dumpty becomes a powerful metaphor for his fall. It's like picturing someone who couldn't be put back together again, which is similar to how Richard died. Once the king fell, not just in war, but also because of his position, nothing on earth could bring him back to life. Like the fall of the great cannon, the fall of the king marked the end of an age marked by constant power struggles. It was both a literal and a symbolic end. Think about how Humpty Dumpty went from being a vague reference to history to being a well-known humanoid egg. During the Victorian era, when magical and everyday things were often mixed together, Lewis Carroll reimagined the character in a very different way. Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There, which came out in 1871, is where Carroll first introduced the world to a version of Humpty Dumpty that would change the childhood rhyme forever. It's important to remember that Lewis Carroll, who was great at writing nonsense and deep meanings, might not have picked an egg at random to be Humpty Dumpty. Rich in meaning, eggs are often linked to fragility, possibility, and return. Within Carroll's story, Humpty Dumpty is perched on a wall and having a talk with Alice that is full of puns and riddles. His round, unstable shape grabs people's attention with its silliness and encapsulates the rhyme's themes of falling and not being able to be fixed. Also, the egg-like shape fit perfectly with the Victorian and Edwardian love of nursery rhymes and fairy tales. By the time artists like John Tenniel started drawing their ideas of Carroll's work, Humpty Dumpty had become permanently associated with the Eggman. He was often dressed in funny old clothes that made him seem like a character who had been thrown out of time, similar to how the rhyme itself had been interpreted in the past, but is now forgotten. This new meaning by Carroll made a strangely stronger link to the heart of the original Humpty Dumpty. Through the lens of a children's book that seemed innocent, he showed how people have always been interested in the cycle of rise and fall, covering up the harsh facts of history with a charming cover. When the egg is broken, it shows how impossible it is to get it back, which was a theme in earlier, darker forms of the rhyme. So, the fact that Humpty Dumpty turned into an egg shows how powerful it is for artists to change things. This change in the way stories are told shows how people like to hide hard facts behind more interesting fiction. There is a way to go from the seriousness of historical imagery to the fun of reading books for kids. So, Humpty Dumpty in his egg-shaped form lives on, encouraging each generation to think about the deeper meanings of the song while enjoying the character's silly appearance. By taking apart Humpty Dumpty, we are reminded of the deep meanings that lie beneath the surface of childhood rhymes. Not only are these stories fun for kids, but they also give us a look into the past and show how politics, culture, and society have changed over time. When we take a closer look at this old rhyme, it leaves us with a sense of wonder and a lesson of how powerful stories can be. We want you to keep going on this journey of learning and exploration. Stay tuned for more exciting stories, hidden histories, and mysterious practices coming soon. Let's go deep into the past together. You never know what other secrets we might find. Don't forget to like, share, and follow for more interesting journeys into the hidden histories.